It is a joy and a delight to welcome to the Diocese of Chicago the Most Reverend Katharine Jefferts Schori, the Primate of the Episcopal Church.
Thank you very much. It really is a great privilege and joy to be here. And it just went through my head that when I was an undergraduate, there weren't any sororities, so I didn't get to do Rush. I often talk about this when I get an opportunity to meet with clergy and lay leaders. That word conversation comes into English from Latin, as you might expect, from con plus verso, literally to turn about with. Come on in, find a chair. There are seats in front as normal. And when conversation comes into English about the year 1300, it doesn't mean what we mean today. It doesn't mean to talk. It means to have dealings with, to hang out with, to do business with, to interact with people out there. It's about building community. It's about building intimate community. And so much so that there's a technical term in English law called criminal conversation. It's about spending too much time with the wrong person. It's a legal term for adultery. And I would connect it with that Hebrew word yada, to know. Adam knew his wife, and she conceived and bore a child. Same word used of God knowing us. It's about intimate community. That's our job. Building intimate community by spending time with people, enough time that we come to know the image of God in each other, enough time to realize that this person who drives us crazy also has a gift to offer, enough time to not to go to war with words, but to spend time. It's also what prayer is really about, spending time, not using words. And there are two pretty obvious places where Christians might start conversation, and I would connect them to the two creation stories in Genesis. First one, God creates and it is good, God creates and it is good, God creates and it is good. At the end of the week, God creates human beings, and creation is very good. Second one's about what goes wrong. Think about the beginning of Jesus' own ministry. He goes down to the Jordan River, is baptized by John, comes out, hears the voice saying, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." Good, blessed creation. And then he goes out into the wilderness to be tempted. Right? It's a conscious reprise of those two creation stories. If we start in the first story, who do we expect to find as conversation partner? Good creation, blessing, image of God. What do we get if we start in the second story? You miserable sinner, you. It's a very different orientation. And I think our task really is to equip members of intimate community to go out into the world and have conversation with the blessed image of God in everybody we meet. So what do you want to talk about? I'm just stunned by what I've seen here in the last hour. Do you all know what goes on in this neighborhood? Yeah, well, in this, I don't know, 60 blocks, whatever. More than 500 housing units. $66 million worth of renovation work. Transformed neighborhood. it's the most powerful example of community housing that I have seen or know about across the Episcopal Church. And it's also an example of how you can build partnerships with people who aren't the Episcopal Church to do the work of the gospel. And we have a master at that. Wise as serpents, innocent as doves. Use the tools that are available and transform people's lives. So, what's on your minds?
Well, how are you finding opportunities for this sort of conversation as you meet with your colleagues, not only in our Episcopal Church in this country, but with our sisters and brothers in the communion?
Mm-hmm. When people are willing to sit down and spend time and not just assume they know about the other, there's possibility for enormous transformation of heart, even if positions don't change. And it's the transformation of the heart that I think we're about.
And are you having such experience?
Yes,
Yeah?
yes. I look at the group of primates.
They don't make the headlines.
No, they don't. Of course they don't. Of course they don't make the headlines.
But you're having them.
And the whole communion is having them. There are more relationships of partnership across the communion today than there were 10 years ago. You're in southeast Mexico, and Sudan, you know something about what it's like to live in those contexts, and they're beginning to learn something about what it's like here. You understand increasingly what it means to live the gospel where you are, and how together we can be far more effective than all alone. When that happens, the position somebody has on a hot-button issue doesn't matter nearly as much. Because we're understood as brothers and sisters in Christ doing the work of the gospel. And it's happening. Doesn't mean the conflict's over. The conflict won't be over until the second coming.
One of the things that we've been talking about at Red House for a few years now, and I find it a really compelling set of questions, is that between what we're calling identity and hospitality. One of my students wrote a marvelous, amazing paper that called The Minister as Stranger, Host, and Guest. And I love the way that he talked about how one of the things in his work was that boundaries and walls are not always a bad thing.
Right.
That there's a way
Right.
to provide protection.
Right.
And so we've talked about things like identity as a way of providing a safe space, but also how do you talk about hospitality as having a permeable without losing identity. Can you talk a little bit about, because when we talk about the outreach to the community and the work that we're doing, how then do we talk about our own identity without getting so fuzzy that we become really nothing at all?
Oh, this is not the Gong Show. The ordered freedom, that's what we talk about as Anglicans. It means we've got some kind of boundary, some kind of container for doing that work of conversation. If there is no boundary at all, the conversation, that people don't get close enough together to have conversation. We're isolated. So in some sense, it's like putting the flock in the pasture at night. It's like a room in which you can gather to have conversation. If there are no boundaries on a 100-acre field, people aren't going to get together to meet each other. What does that mean in the Episcopal Church? We value hospitality. We value reason. We value the shape of our liturgy, even though it gets adapted in different contexts. We value the ministry of all God's people, and we think it's important inside the church and in the world. But the particular forms that we put that into are increasingly flexible. And that drives some people crazy who know one form and love it and only find comfort there. Emergent church is a good example. It looks very different in different places. And, Jay's been asking me repeatedly, what does the music look like? What kind of music is going on in these places? I don't know. I think it has to vary based on who's there and what kind of community gathers. But probably there has to be music, because that's part of who we are. It's part of how we are joyful and part of how we lament and how we move beyond our individual selves, how we build a community together. And we've got this shape of liturgy. And it's, recognizably similar to 1662. It's a long way, but there's still some pattern to it. We need more forms. We need to keep going. We've got enriching our worship. I don't know that we're ever going to do another thing like this. We have such bad memories of the last time. But this thing we still call new has transformed us. Has it become an idol? I don't know. But I don't know what the next chapter is going to look like. But it's going to be more varied. Has a similar shape, but the particularities are going to vary. They have to. We don't live in one culture in the United States part of the church even, and there are 15 other national contexts for the Episcopal Church, as well as all of the immigrant contexts here. We've got a family of patterns, and they're recognizable. The identity is observable, but it's varied. So,
can you say a little bit about what that might mean theologically?
Can you talk about theology?
Yeah.
I think about that a lot today. You're talking about liturgy and values, but what would that mean in terms of theology?
The body of Christ has many parts, none more valued than another, but all essential. I can talk about it in terms of creation and looking at the diversity of creation. My favorite example is an agricultural one. You can't grow the same crop in the same field year after year after year after year without immense inputs of manure and pesticides and herbicides. And you don't produce a healthy crop. The most productivity comes in something like an original prairie with great species diversity and use. Intense grazing. Herbivores come along and eat the food in one little place for a while, down almost to the ground, and then they move on to another place. That's how creation is wired.
And I follow with that image of the prairie. And what role does fire play in the church?
Yes. Well, the earthquake in Haiti will be a blessing eventually. Zaché Ducassin is able to say that cathedral was too small. We will find resurrection in the aftermath. That's who we are as a people. We have to expect that. And this was a fire. This was a fire. And we've been more productive since, in different ways.
graduated from a traditional 3-year seminary, Seeking Western Education. We had it now. Number of seminaries grew out. How do you see theological education in this church evolve? It's going to be a more ecumenical, it's going to be more diverse. Are we going to have 2 or 3 main seminaries, or what?
That's a wonderful question. Diversity is a sign of health in the natural world, but you can't keep doing the same thing the same way forever without evolving. We have 11 Episcopal seminaries. We graduate about 250 MDivs a year. You do the math. An average under of 20, a seminary will not support a full-time faculty of the range of gifts that are needed. And there are a couple of seminaries who graduate significantly more than 20 students a year. Those 250 students represent well under half of the new priestly ordinands every year. Fewer than half do a traditional 3-year residential Episcopal seminary program. Diocesan schools are increasingly important. People can't afford $100,000 for an education, as well as the displacement of family. Perhaps people who already have substantial educational debt. And we need to be forming people for a great variety of ministries in the church. I think we're coming back into a season where we're going to see a lot more what used to be called worker priests, bivocational clergy, as part of teams. We're going to need all of the formally trained, more academic or seminary model clergy that we can produce, but we're going to be using them differently. Small congregations, several of whom may be supported by one of those clergy, but will have resident worker priests there most of the time. That's increasingly a model in the rural parts of the church, in the immigrant parts of the church, where economically self-sustaining clerical ministry is impossible. It's evolving. I think we're in full communion with the Lutherans. We're in full communion with the Moravians. We're sort of moving in that direction with the Methodists. I think we're going to see more willingness to partner in theological education, still retaining our own denominational identities. There's no reason we can't study the Bible together or learn church history together. We'd probably be more effective if we knew more about the other parts of church history. I did most of my church history at a Roman seminary. It was fascinating to look at the Reformation through those eyes.
You mean the English schism?
Those invalid orders. But it will give us, I think, more compassion, more ability to work together, more understanding. Maybe if we're willing to be a little more vulnerable in how we do our learning. And, this shouldn't have come at the end, we need to be educating the whole people of God, not just clergy. Great.
I have a transition, and I was in the priesthood when some 19.
Oh, wonderful.
11 o'clock.
Y'all be there.
So, my question to you is, what advice do you have for me, a seasoned clergy, maybe fresh and renewed?
Oh, well, have a conversation. Have a conversation. Spend time. If we'd had a little more time, I would have invited us to hear God saying to each one of us what God says to Jesus when he's baptized. And in you I am well pleased. If you spend 5 minutes in silence with that in the morning, and do it for a month, your life will be transformed. Everybody in our congregations needs to do the same thing. My realization is that clergy have a hard time hearing that. We're all based on works righteousness most of the time. We believe we have to be working harder rather than sitting still some of the time and letting ourselves be loved.
Change this up again. I'd be interested to hear what your feeling and your understanding is of the phrase relational consequences.
Oh. I think it's a Briticism for punishment. I said I think it's a Briticism for punishment. I think it's a... I think it's a way of saying you're not going to be invited to the tea party. We live with relational consequences all the time. We fall short. We sin. We offend people. We screw up. We do the wrong thing when we want to do the right thing. We are just like Paul. But at least the Christianity I know says we ask for forgiveness, we seek to amend our lives, and we go and try again. We don't let the consequences keep us away from the conversation. I think that the relational consequences of disagreement ought to be more intensely enforced proximity. I'm quite serious. If you can't get along with somebody, you need to spend enough time to discover the blessing in your enemy. Because it's there. It's there. And, putting somebody in time out doesn't solve that.
And you think that's the intent of covenant in relation to that phrase, is to sort of make us into secondary citizens in the Anglican communion? Do you think that the intent of that term is a process that would place the Episcopal Church and the Anglican Church of Canada into secondary class citizens in the Anglican communion?
Well, I'm going to answer this by going in another direction. If you look at the people who are most upset about the covenant, they are either the people who think it's about punishment or the people who think it's not about strong enough punishment. Right? We live with a covenant already called "You are my beloved, and in you I am well pleased." And I'm so well pleased that I've sent somebody already to do that hard work. I think the relational consequence ought to be eternal conversation. And some parts of the communion are responding that way, saying, we're going to talk about this. We're not going to end it. We're going to talk about it. We're going to stay engaged in it. Andrea.
We know each other.
Yeah. She started in Nevada. You got a good one.
Catherine, I was wondering how the conversation went this afternoon with the medical community. What kind of responses do they have to this church and the medical community? What kind of partnerships and how they envision that we can work together?
We talked more broadly than just church. We talked about faith communities and people of faith. Eagerness for partnership. I think everybody who responded recognizes that the challenges of healing are beyond the capacity of any one institution or kind of healing work. It takes all of us together working to help move this world towards something that looks more like the reign of God. Each of us can do a piece. None of us can do it all. The remarkable work that's gone on in this neighborhood hasn't yet resulted in a grocery store. There's a partner needed there. It's done phenomenal work in housing and education. And that's only the part I have heard about. And building community. But there's no feeding station. There's no other than this one. It's a great eagerness for partnership. Yeah.
Hi, Carway Sheriff from St. John's in Chicago. I'm wondering if you could help me a little bit with my vestry budget meeting. I think I've convinced my congregation that we are wealthy, but I want to convince them to give more away, especially at this time, and I'm wondering if you can help me with that.
Where does it come from? Whose is it really? What are we meant to do with it except give it away? And we're meant to give it all away. Ministry's meant to be given away. Leadership's meant to be given away. The stuff in our pockets is meant to be given away. Several of the people in the medical community I talked with today talked about their own forays into, third world medicine and how much more they receive from going and doing that. Putting themselves outside of their, usual comfort box, risking, being vulnerable. It can be enormously challenging, as we heard about the, what people who've gone to Haiti experience. It's way worse than anything they experience here. But it's also it's a converting experience. It teaches you that you can't do it all yourself. You need a community to respond. And money is just money. It's a symbol. It's a symbol.
Could I get your sense of the current status of the Anglican community? Are more people staying in the conversation to keep the ball rolling, so to speak?
Yes. There's still a handful of archbishops who don't want to play. But there are more, I think, intriguing conversations going on through continuing Indaba. You have any experience of that? I do. Okay. 3 dioceses from different parts of the communion that send their bishops and hopefully some other leaders in the diocese to meet, talk, learn about each other. And it's not just 2-way, it's 3-way. It changes the dynamics. So you can learn about who this stranger is and how God is present in a strange place. How to sing the Lord's song in a place that feels very foreign.
So you sense positive movement?
I do. And as people, retreat from the, level 4 or 5 conflict, they remember that there are gifts to be found in other places, in other communities, in other stances, in other theological perspectives, and uniformity is not healthy, ultimately. We can't all be left little toes in the body of Christ. There's a question up here, too. He had his hand up. Then maybe we go to the back.
I live in vocational team at the St. System.
Wonderful.
The Episcopal Church was
so many wonderful, wonderful, wonderful things. But 90% of our media is negative media. And my question is that what can the national church do? And I give you, for example, things that Reverend Collins has done here is just incredible. And it's got a little bit of press, but not as much as it should. And we've got one of our charities agencies, Cathedral Shelter, that over the next 3 weeks, 1,500 families, I'm not talking more than 1,500 individuals, will have Christmas because of the Episcopal Diocese of Chicago Day. But how can the national church help get us on, say, 60 Minutes or 90 Minutes?
I think two things. We're not a national church. We're a 16-nation church. We have somebody in our communications department, church-wide, is working intensely on earned media opportunities. Fruits of thinking in that way got a story about Stroger and Carol Reese's ordination into the New York Times today, I hear. Haven't seen it yet. The articles that Manya Brashear has written, raise awareness about who we are as a church. We're better known than you might expect. We've gotten a lot of positive press out of the midst even of the conflict. People are recognizing that we are hospitable to a variety of perspectives, that we are a welcoming place. Our communications department did a research study over the last year on new Episcopalians, people who have joined the Episcopal Church in the last 3 years. 3 particular communities, Latinas, women from the Latino-Hispanic tradition, not necessarily recent immigrants, young adults, and women going through some kind of life-changing experience, divorce, re-entry into the job market after having children, women who want to lose weight. I'm serious. Do you know what websites talk about the Episcopal Church the most? It's not David Virtue. Urban Baby, iVillage, Weight Watchers. We host groups of Weight Watchers in many congregations. They know us as a place of hospitality who will walk with people in the transitions in their lives and that we're willing to let people ask questions. We don't tell you. Latina women find us attractive because we're not dogmatic and we value women's leadership. And the Roman tradition from which they come does not. Women are key in this because apparently women make most of the decisions about where families go to church. A healthy congregation has got ministries that attend to the spiritualities of women and of men and of young adults and of seniors, of the varieties of people who are present there. It's not one size fits all. Did you have one in the back? Yeah.
I think I can do it without tonight. I was in a conversation just this morning with a colleague in ministry from another denomination who does transition ministry across that denomination. And he was coming to terms with me with the fact that unit as they run it will probably cease to be economically viable in the next year.
Okay.
As you know, I've been in a number of dioceses and have seen different diocesan, regional, provincial organizations. And just like at the parish level we're under pressure, at the larger level we're under pressure. Mm-hmm. As we look at this, what some people are calling trans-denominationalism, I wonder if you'd comment about the institutional frameworks that we do this ministry through.
Well, the fact that we're in full communion with the Lutherans, and we've been in full communion for almost 10 years. We're going to celebrate 10 years of full communion, both in the United States part of our context and the Canadian context, because they've been in full communion for 10 years as well. We're going to have a celebration on May 1st on the border. All 4 churches, probably somewhere near Buffalo. May 1st. Y'all come. But after 10 years, we are finally beginning to talk about how we might share ministry and ministry support at something beyond the parish level. We can do, church development work together. We can do all sorts of things together. We share enough theologically that we can do educational work together. We can do advocacy work together. We probably don't need duplicate persons, staff officers, in all of those areas. How can we work smarter? That said, the whole Christendom model is behind us. We don't live there anymore. We're going to wander in the desert for a while until we figure out what kind of systems are needed to support a new kind of Christian community. That's coming, and we're going to see more variety than we have in the last 50 or 100 years. We're going to live on the frontier again for a while. If you're willing to look, you discover that the innovative things in our history have come in environments and contexts and at times that have been stressful. The Israelites wandering in the desert discovered a whole lot of really important things. Same thing happened during the exile. That's where synagogues came from. People developed new forms and ways of supporting their life with God. We're in the process of doing that. So it's a matter of keeping our boundaries a little bit flexible and keeping our identity clear. What are the non-negotiables? They're probably not the 1982 hymnal. They might not be pews. They might not be a church building. There are congregations who meet in homes, who move around. There's a great story about the Diocese of Ripon and Leeds in England, a place called St. Mary's Harrogate, Lower Harrogate, I think. The building fell down. They let it. They let it. Small congregations meet in homes in a variety of ways. They come together every 2 weeks for worship that they call cafe church in the parish hall, which is used in many other ways all the rest of the time, not unlike, I think, this building. And they call themselves a network church. Will it last? Who knows? No form does forever, except faithful people coming together to support each other and connect with God, and then going out into the world to do the same kind of thing, and then coming back and being nourished to go back and do it again. I think it's one of the most exciting times to be an Episcopalian and a Christian in a long, long time. Okay. But we have to remember what the angel says. Be not afraid. Be not afraid. Yeah. Okay.
What a wonderful note to end on. Bishop Katharine Jefferts Schori.
Thank you.